Recording is on.
Welcome to the December 2nd governance discussion for DXDAO. On the governance 1.0 front, I wanted to start with the governance gas refunds round 2. So this is the third round, actually, because we had round 0, which was from August up into all previous governance actions, doing some refunds on the gas costs. And then governance round 1 was in September to I think the beginning of October. And so we just have the refund number 2 here. So Nico, I don't know if you wanted to present anything from that. I've got some kind of thoughts on that, but in terms of people collecting and getting refunds, it's actually a pretty easy process to do. You do have to kind of work with Etherscan there. But anything else to kind of let people know?
Not from my side. I added an explanation in the DAO talk post, and if you have any issues, just let me know. But it should be pretty straightforward getting your refund there.
Cool. And this is like now getting to the point where we have a little bit of a track record, right, where we can kind of see and track different things. So I actually did kind of crunch some of the or applied some of the numbers from Nico's post that I just wanted to kind of share here to show where we've kind of come in terms of proposals and spending out here. So these are the kind of you can find this in Nico's post, but I just kind of copied it from there. So you can see round 1, as I said, round 0, as I said, that one was, I think it was from like August to ever since DXDAO's inception. So that's why you see kind of the higher numbers for proposals and votes, because that's several months. But since gas was not as much of a concern there, you can see that. And then I just kind of put these together in this kind of component here. So this is the number of proposals here. So round 0, round 1, and round 2. And so the round 2, the most recent one, we have a little bit less proposals, but there's actually a pretty good savings in terms of gas cost from that. So you can see we had 20 ETH in 20 ETH in round number 1, and we only did 7.3 ETH here. Obviously, I think that's mostly just because gas costs have come down considerably, even if they are a little bit high. And then just kind of also, DeepDAO actually has some pretty good, I think they've been doing a little bit better about, they have a pretty good CSV to download. So I looked at some of that and kind of wanted to start the conversation how we're kind of looking at our monthly spend and kind of where we're spending our time, both as it relates to gas costs, right? So try to make those things efficient when we talk about even moving to layer 2, like what is kind of causing some of the governance or where are we spending most of our time in governance here. So this is actually all proposals, I think, since May 1. You can see we've had 206 this is past proposals, 206 past proposals, which is issued 270,000 rep, and that's just under 1,000 ETH that has been issued there. And then just kind of looking at each month as a little bit of a breakdown here. So starting with ETH first. So this would be like ETH payouts from the treasury over this time. So you can see we're starting to get some regularity, right? So September and October, both a little over 200 ETH, and then November just down under 180 ETH. I think most of this, I haven't kind of crunched the numbers entirely, but I mean, I think we have expanded the number of worker proposals we've gotten. I think it's just the rising price of ETH obviously has kind of meant that we're spending less ETH on there. I do think it's interesting to kind of compare, we're thinking about spending ETH. I think ETH is like the capital asset, or what we're using to fund a lot of things. And, we have kind of 3 ways that we're funding different types of actions, right? Whether that's a worker proposal, we consider a full-time contributor, the reimbursement, and perhaps this should be like contractor too, because I'm putting some of the the audits in there, the block rocket people in there, and then bounty, right? So this would be the Gitcoin one that we have coming up, or other kind of rep ones here. And I think that, not sure what the ideal breakdown of these 3, but we should I think we should kind of be using more of the bounty as we've discussed more there, and then just keeping track of how we're doing that. And then on the rep front, again, this is just kind of all taken from Deep DAO in terms of rep rewards over those months. And I think this is it kind of, there's a lot of signal and noise of this because I'm not sure exactly how people submit their proposals in terms of the beginning of the month, the end of the month. But we have had a little bit of a decline in rep issuance. And I'm not sure exactly what that is from. And then this is just like the number of proposals. You can see like around 30 to 40 that we're kind of doing every month here. So yeah, just kind of some numbers that I thought were interesting, both related to the gas cost, right, and the refunds around here, but then also kind of starting to look at how we're like spending ETH out of the treasury and where it's going. Any thoughts, questions?
One of the topics we've been discussing in the working group is like rewarding governance, right? And in some cases, there's been mention of like, if you participate as a rep holder and stuff, like you could, in theory, have a chance to earn like DXD, or earn like, if you also have rep, you might get some DXD on behalf of that rep, or like, you know, how do you incentivize active governance? Like in theory, there you could be earning money doing that, right? But in this case, what we've seen so far is we've been reimbursing 75% around for active governance, which is a cost to the person still. So the person still says, I'm willing to vote on these things. You know, I want to vote on lots of worker proposals because I want to show my support of those proposals, even though I know it's going to cost me money. I'm going to get some money back, but it's also going to cost the DAO money as well. When really you could just have one or two people, like Elon has mentioned, like one or two people vote on each proposal. Once one or two are passing, is there any benefit to having another 15 people vote on that proposal when you know it's going to cost the person and it's going to cost the DAO money, right? And so there's this like dilemma between, right now we're doing governance and it's costing us. We could optimize that better. We could, you know, only vote when really necessary and things like that, and try to reduce the amount we're spending on gas for governance. Or we could pay people, or, you know, financially incentivize people to do governance, and actually they could earn money doing that. And then you would get like this, what's happening now, let's say multiples higher. Like if you're getting like, if you're going to earn money doing governance, maybe all of a sudden 100 rep holders will show up and vote on every proposal. That's going to cost the DAO quite a bit of money through gas reimbursements and through paying them, right? So there's this weird dilemma, like, what do we want? Do we want lots of participation, or do we just want the participation to pass the proposal enough to get it passed without it not passing, but be smart economically, right? So that's like a unanswered debate.
Yeah, let's put a pin in the kind of participation thing, because actually I think Pulp had a post that kind of addresses a little bit of that, because it's not as clear, like black and white, in how we're measuring that. I do think we can see this gas reimbursement, right, as a way of incentivizing governance, right? We are paying people ETH to govern, but obviously that's kind of covering their costs there. But I think it is kind of notable that we did kind of see a pretty big decline in terms of the cost for the month. And like, you know, thinking about 7 ETH is, you know, that's a lot of money, but that's kind of really like the overhead to running a company in a lot of ways. Like we're doing payroll, we're doing all of these kind of different things. So I think we want to try to minimize that, but that's, I think, still a worthwhile expense.
Yeah. would we have wanted 100 rep holders to vote on each one of these though? Like, or do we not want that?
Well, yeah, I mean, so I think there's a difference between governance and like community building. And so when I think about like engaging rep holders and having people engage in governance, I think governance is like a really great way of like building community, separate from like how exactly effective it is as like a pure like governance efficiency.
Yeah, to also like another point is I would argue that the fact that we kind of incentivizing people to look at the proposals is also some kind of security feature, because at the end of the day we want that those rep holders actually look at the proposals and kind of know what they are, and like the vote at the end is kind of like this approval that they actually like looked at it and know what they're doing. And we're actually also paying for security here.
Yeah, that's a good point. Cool. I'm going to write this up into an actual post. I was actually just doing that this morning. And so I think last time I posted the kind of some of these tables in there, but I'll put the tables in a post and then link to the spreadsheet to dive a little bit more. Because as Christopher kind of pointed out, the categories are not like, I'm still kind of tweaking the categories. I had reimbursement at first, and then like now it's kind of these contractors, and a lot of times we're doing different things. But it's good to kind of give a high level overview, but then allow kind of people to dive in more into the details.
Yeah, sorry guys. I think part of the post that we put up yesterday definitely I could address some of the discussion just now, but my connectivity was really bad, so I actually didn't hear the comments. So maybe I'll just hold up until Chris mentions the proposal and I could just go over it. Yeah,
I think that works. Let's just go over, I just want to go over like the current, what's the proposals in the queue right now, just as like an overview, and then we can kind of talk about that post there. So yeah, just kind of going over the, speaking of security, as Dron was saying, I think it's important for us all to kind of constantly be aware of proposals in the queue, even if they look normal, just kind of having some vigilance on that. So obviously one of the proposals right now that I think is a somewhat exciting one is the Dxd Burn. So that was kind of submitted last week, and it is at, I believe, so right now it's 7 votes, 2.76% for and 11.69% against. And so this, again, would burn 500 DXD, which is 0.5% of the pre-mint. And it's kind of an experiment in terms of like the monetary policy aspect of this. And then there are several different worker proposals going on, including my own. I don't know if there's, I should get out of this. Yeah, and kind of a whole bunch of ones going on there. I don't know if anyone had anything to say about those. And then there is the DXswap deployment for Swapper DApp, the low-cost version. And just so in case people weren't aware, so this is the deployer contract for Swapper. DXswap is kind of what it's in actual contracts there. And there are actually 2 proposals in there for funding the deployer contract, but this one I think is the one that is actually boosted, and that is with a 2 ETH expense. And so this is, again, thinking about like voter participation. I think it's kind of cool to be voting for the launch of like deployer for Swapper. And so that's kind of something I think that would be cool to get a lot of votes on, just to build some momentum on that. And then, yeah, there's just a couple different ones on Mesa.eth updates, and then kind of some DXDAO market curation batches. And I don't know, people that are checking the proposal queue, like oftentimes we kind of just go straight to the funding and voting power one, but obviously there are other schemes on there that also have proposals and different timelines there.
It's maybe worth mentioning too that if a proposal gets to 50%, it passes like at that time. So there's actually like an opportunity here if we could get participation up to 50% to actually improve some of our timelines on actions that we take. Just something to be aware of.
Cool. So that was kind of it, I guess, for the proposal front. I think there's like 11 that are in there. So it is a kind of busy time. And I know with some worker proposals, as like we turn to the top of the month, there's lots of different ones in there. Cool. And then Pulp, I don't know if you wanted to start on the post that you had, which I think is kind of relevant to a lot of the discussion we've been having here about like participation and who's participating, right? I think that's kind of an interesting angle when we think about rep holders and people voting, like who exactly are voting and why are they voting on different things. So
yeah, definitely. Right. So just to get a sense of how we're doing, and I mean, the premise of this, of course, should be discussed regarding does voter engagement, is that really a good test of how we're doing as far as our decentralization and governance? But just to think is, traditionally in democratic organizations, some sense of semblance of voter engagement is important for a decentralized or democratic organization, right? So maybe not for all proposals, especially when we do have a lot of more technical proposals that should be getting lower votes. We do still, as far as considering how many rep holders we do have right now, at least for November 15th to October 18th, we had essentially 17 rep holders participate in voting, which, that's not bad, especially considering how many people communicate on the DAO, but it's definitely not, I mean, obviously if we had quorums or something like that, we wouldn't be reaching any type of real quorum. Obviously we can like talk about that, but 1 to 6 votes, the most, the mode, I guess, of the votes, the most votes received for a proposal is either 3 or 1. That's not awesome as far as a representative community sample. Maybe that is, though, just because gas prices are really high, and the way to focus on getting more of a better general sense of the community support is to work on more formalized signaling and DAO talk through some sort of polling mechanism, maybe something that doesn't cost people money, but we can get more of a feel for more of an informal off-chain vote. And then, when something does go on-chain, like it's been mentioned by Elon and Sky, that would be something where, a proposal, especially when it's really unanimous as far as community consensus, only gets 1 vote. And, you even have kind of this backup proof where you see that obviously the community supported it based on the poll. But the thing that I found interesting was, aside from low engagement rates, was just the breakdown in who's participating in voting, as Chris mentioned. So based on our current rep distribution system, workers are accruing rep at a higher rate because they're participating, and based on their merit, they are gaining rep, which is great. And that's definitely a good premise that we should lead by. But what's happening is the other rep holders, because they have no incentive to regularly participate because they aren't, being paid to work here, aren't participating in voting on a regular basis. Maybe as a hobby, maybe they have some sort of business affiliation or relationship to the DAO. But the question is, how do we get these other stakeholders that aren't just employees participating? Because, they have their own perspective that may be necessary to kind of balance our own personal biases that we don't even realize that we have in decision making. So that could be something that could be considered. Maybe a financial incentive could be something we could do. Definitely not something that I think we'd have to balance that out with the DAO and what can be like reasonably affordable for the Treasury. I don't think, making an open call to have any rep holder participate, in an important vote would necessarily be the right way. But maybe even, an option that vests over a 3-month period, one-time vesting, where, hey, if you vote this month or within this 3-month period, you're going to get some DXD. And people are like, oh, okay, like at least I'll start taking some interest and try to vote on, maybe a proposal that's more important to a strategy point that we find interesting. And it could be gimmicky, but obviously it's a good promotional sense to get more rep holders that maybe have been a bit sleepy involved in this decentralized process. So that was some of the post goes into more detail. I made some spreadsheets that I can link at some point if people care to really see like what the exact breakdown was. The basic framework is, of course, workers have more voting power at this point, which of course, if you don't have enough voting power, you're probably just not going to participate because you really feel like your vote doesn't count. So between not having financial incentive and not feeling like your vote's going to count, why would you participate in this complicated governance process? So that's my general summary. I have some other thoughts, of course, and I think I talked with Chris briefly about it, kind of about prioritizing posts and maybe some of the front end interface with DAOstat with the alchemy is maybe not so user friendly. And there could be some methods we could use to like agree upon what should be in a post as far as a proposal for alchemy, so it's a little bit more clear. Make sure everyone puts links to everything that's going on in DAO Talk. Anything referenced that would make it easier for people to make an informed decision in a vote. But yeah, I would appreciate everyone's feedback.
Yeah, I think like the idea of like, of course, not every proposal is the same. So how do we almost differentiate between proposals so some people kind of pay attention to some and some to others and that. So there's actually some good discussion in the chat. So I don't know if anyone has any questions they want to, or kick off the discussion from there.
Well, I can speak for myself. Like, I think sometimes, like for proposals, it's risky to vote off the bat, right? Because you can lose Jen, or like you can, like I wanted to vote for Bram, and it turns out like I dodged the bullet right there. And like it's more secure to vote like when it's up there, like when everyone agrees, and that's bad. Like it's herd mentality. But there are consequences if vote doesn't pass. You lose rep, you lose Jen.
Yeah.
Just to clarify that, that is only true if you vote before a proposal is boosted. So if you're voting after a proposal gets boosted, you're not going to lose anything other than your gas.
Is there anything when you're voting pending? Because like I don't vote on pending boosting.
Yeah, pending is a cosmetic. Like it's still in the regular queue. It's just
okay.
It's like pending being able to be boosted, but it's effectively still in the regular queue.
So it's not boosted, which means a pending boost gets punished.
Yes, exactly. Only boosted, you avoid that.
So that's like a really interesting. Sorry, that's just like a really interesting thing, because to me that's just like a simple communication issue that we can fix, and just making sure that we put maybe they are somewhere and everyone's not aware. What are the exact rules with how your vote plays out? Like, what's the protocol basically spelled out in simple English for people just to quickly link to? That maybe could help people figure that one out quicker.
The participation agreement that is linked to an alchemy in the upper left spells everything out, but it is far from simple English and not easy to crack.
Okay, so maybe
I actually think this is a UI problem. Like I think the UI could be improved to really make this, like if you're about to vote on something, the UI should, and you can lose your rep by voting on that, like the UI should tell you, I think.
That's
also
interesting.
Also full disclosure on this, like I think we should remove that from the protocol because it's a very small amount of rep, and I don't think it's really making a difference other than kind of scaring people and being confusing. So no, actually changing that in the DXDAO might be, that would be kind of a big thing for you guys to do. But if we were considering that, that's probably what I would argue for. I'd be interested to hear if anybody wants to specifically keep that feature, the thing about possibly losing a little bit of rep if you vote against the majority on a proposal early. But maybe we don't open that now, but yeah.
Yeah, like in general, what pulp is basically like there. She said like several things here. What I want to address is that there is like we are currently, I would consider in like a danger zone in terms of developer getting control of all of it, and I think the zombie rep is kind of protecting. Hopefully, it's if the developers are actually taking over. So we have like a period of time where we can like make sure that the developers are not getting control, and the time is limited, and we can like how we do it is we are giving out control, and it's important that we give it we give rep out not only to devs but to other stakeholders in the system, which is I guess like the first step is DXD holders.
Right. And interesting rep. I think, eventually I think the guild could be an interesting way to get, customers involved, of course. But yeah, DXD, and then any sleepy rep holders that are, really interested in participating. But I mean, obviously it's some sort of incentive, but somehow move them up with, gaining more rep in an easy way. And I know we talked a little bit about that maybe with the less outgoing individuals during our governance 2.0 call, but maybe, active participators on DAO stack get an automatic drop of rep or something that is some sort of comparative balancing out with what devs have on average.
Yeah, is anyone here somewhat familiar with what Maker has been trying out with source cred and paying governance participants?
No. Do you have more to elaborate? It sounds interesting.
Yeah, it is pretty interesting. So source cred is a sort of like PageRank style algorithm that produces a set of scores for things like forum posts. Like you could produce a set of scores that rank how much people have contributed to DAO Talk, for example, based on how often their posts are replied to by other people and things like that. And then Maker is using this to basically try to measure the most valuable participants to their governance, and then just like pay them basically on a regular basis according to that. I'm not saying we should do source cred or whatever, but the idea of somehow trying to create a criteria for like contributing work to the governance process, that doing the work of reading proposals and discussing them and voting intelligently, it could be something to just reward, identify and reward. That might be something to think about.
Yeah, the good thing about that is getting rep in the hands of people that want to participate and want to vote. This is the issue, is like there's all these kind of dead rep holders. Even if you incentivize them, maybe financially, they might start voting. But if you don't want to vote, there's no reason to start voting, like on these types of proposals, unless it's gonna affect you or something, right?
Yeah, I think that's kind of the strength of the source cred style measurement of it, because it's a very it's not a very linear measurement. Like basically, it's really hard to fake all of that participation and make yourself look like you're a big important participant to get the reward. So I think it is doing a pretty good job of identifying people that have that interest. So you're rewarding people for like actually showing, like if you're someone right now who's one of these ghost people who like has a small amount of rep, not participating at all, this is the kind of thing that might get you to say like, oh, so if I just start participating in conversations more, then I'll start getting rewarded more, and I can kind of get into that positive feedback loop. Whereas now, if you just take that person and you just give them a bunch of extra rep, or you just give them a bunch of extra DXD, that might not actually get them invested in the process. At least that's what I worry about when we talk about just dropping a bunch of rep or DXD to people, is that most of the people you do that to will just not get activated. And then you will have like diluted everybody else, you know, a lot.
I think it could pull in and activate some important people. However, a lot, if you, the numbers that SourceCred will show for giving out rep to active people, like a lot of it's going to end up pointing to the already active workers and active contributors.
Totally.
And then it kind of almost doubles down on some of the workers that already have rep, right? Rather than like pulling new people.
Yeah, and I do think that's the weakness of, even though SourceCred is like a fairly sophisticated algorithm, I think that's the weakness of using, you know, what is ultimately a pretty stale algorithm. And I would advocate, if we were going to do something like this, to, instead of doing a complex programmatic thing, just come up with a set of criteria that's designed to try to accomplish our goals. Like, so if our goal is to try to activate people that are not active now, then we can say, you know, people that meet such and such criteria, like they become active participants when they haven't been before, and they show that, you know, some kind of contribution or whatever we would want to say, those are the people we're going to reward specifically, or something like that.
Yeah,
Could we
exactly. Like we can just like give 2% of the normal SourceCred rewards to like full-time employees. Like the goal is not to give more rep to full-time people.
Right. Right. Another way to do it would just be to make a list of people that you're just going to not count in the SourceCred ranking, right? It's like anybody with greater than 4% rep, just cross them off the list or whatever.
And like, besides like the social communication element, I mean, we could also think about doing something similar with Keybase, because Keybase is like the main gate to the collective. Right. Like if we actually, like, if there are rep holders who don't vote because they don't want to spend money, I think XDAI, the XDAI base, once there is like economy, like once there is money involved, like there's no reason for them to not participate anymore, right? Because transaction doesn't cost anything. If we make sure that the access is like super easy, like I think the DAOstack people are already like working on merging like this interface into that the user just picks the networks and they're like switching the interface and see different proposals. I think that should be enough, right, to give everyone access to both governance systems.
Yeah, and I think it's important to remember, you know, governance is not just like passing proposals, right? It's this discussion, it's things in Keybase. It's like that whole, you know, brainstorming, decision-making process. And so like part of engaging these people is not so much that they will just vote on proposals, but it's that they will contribute to like the rest of the process, and we'll kind of get a more cohesive and like broader based perspective on all of these different things outside of just like how it's affecting like the final vote. I think in terms of like, like addressing this, I think the SourceCred one is just it's a really interesting idea that we need to kind of explore. And I think we were talking about this yesterday. Someone mentioned it, and it's still a little fresh. And it's a great idea. I think that it's rep rather than necessarily like a financial compensation as actually Maker's doing. The other thing that I think Pulp has talked about is kind of engaging those rep holders on larger different types of proposals or things that are like more signally, but are kind of almost about engaging people, right? And so for those, maybe we don't want to boost it, right? Because it's not about us getting like the quickest proposal passed. It's about kind of that engagement. So I'm hoping that like Pulp can kind of work on that. And I kind of talked with Pulp about a couple different things in this area to maybe like work on our like governance engagement and that. So I don't know if Pulp, that you've mentioned that you get interested in maybe submitting a worker proposal in this area. So like, I don't know if you wanted to speak to that before, as you're kind of thinking of what you could be doing to help.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Chris. So after just talking with Chris and John just about some of the needs going on regarding governance and just seeing that there was a governance liaison position kind of generally open, I'm just for basic background. I know we use a pseudonym, but I'm like a licensed attorney based in the United States. My background is in business and white collar litigation mainly, and have done some corporate formation as well. So this is all very interesting to me, and my main, research writing is definitely like my bread and butter. So what I was hoping to kind of bring to the table was just to put some things to paper as far as what the community wants regarding kind of more formalized needs. So things that come up maybe regarding formation of proposals would be one thing. Doing more research on the general, just all of the information right now since DXgov has been voting on what trends we're seeing and doing kind of a month in review regarding those trends. But then also keeping more of a database going on. I know we all post really great articles in the governance chat as well as other areas regarding just different topics that we're interested in maybe trying out. It would be nice to kind of do some analysis on how those would play out. For now, I think just what works best for the community, of course, like what's the best way to be decentralized, keep our rep, keep our values. But more specifically regarding voter engagement, some things that Chris and I talked about, I think we're just how to lean out proposals, like what we need to include in proposals. So when you want to do a proposal, you know what to put in it. And aside from that, I think it would be the same thing goes for fast tracking the proposal lane and maybe even working with like the communications with Keenan regarding how can we decide when a proposal can move quicker, and maybe go through our different teams to kind of like get proposals passed quicker when it comes to like some of these topics that might be drowning out the overall interface for Alchemy, and what proposals teams basically think could be maybe more agreed upon amongst themselves and kind of as a group be passed in Alchemy, things like that.
Wouldn't be ideal to work on something to fix all this? How can we say it? Agility of proposals that we need on the technical level instead of paying someone to talk with everyone and decide. Because, for example, if a proposal enters that is qualified to, be accepted faster, you cannot do it with agreement of other people. Like the only thing that you can do right now is to reach a majority vote and execute it.
So it's up to everybody. That's why Chris and I talked about it. But I think the best example of this that can be a lesson learned on the balance between traditional legal principles and using those to support what can be done with smart contracts and knowing the limitation of protocols is really important here. I think the original DAO and what happened with ETH Classic is a great example of how it's also important to have things in the protocol but have them easily accessible to the community. So there are clear guidelines for how things are passed and how we go about signaling, and so people kind of have some point of reference when those things come up. But again, that's why it's up to the community and how they want to go about this.
Yeah, I think I was just gonna say Violet's example is probably like the best example. And he was like, well, I'm gonna like vote on this, but I'm not really sure. And just that like kind of uncertainty, right? Whereas like I think it's important to like look at who boosts the proposal, right? As like something, and creating some understanding of that in the community just to like make it more efficient.
Yeah, like even the full-time people don't know what will happen. So I also I reach out to people and like ask, what do you think about that? What is your gut feeling? Just for to make sure that I'm not fucking it up, similar to Milan. I think there's like a learning process, but the main issue and I think Palp already mentioned that, like, we don't even know exactly how this system works because it's it's not easily understandable. And in general, I think we definitely need like a specification of how we do governance. I think we know that, we are just busy, and I think we need someone who's doing that. And that's like just a first step to like specify how everything works in simple words. And I think we could actually leverage all of this work to build like a proper dashboard for this, right? Like worker proposals, how should they look like? Like there needs to be a scheme, and we could use that scheme definition to actually create dashboards and interfaces to make it even more simple to make governance.
Yeah, it did sound super efficient what Palp described on, for example, one creates a proposal, talk with the team that is working around the proposal and see if that proposal is follows the guidelines. Instead of having someone being in charge of that operation, I agree with all of you of what we mentioned here, that we need guidelines and something that we can follow up, where we know that these conditions are going to be met naturally, right? Because if all of us follow the same guidelines and instruction of how to create a proposal, what content should I do? Should I add there? What is important in the proposal and what is not? Proof of work, yeah, something that we talked before. If it is a worker proposal, you should add the proof of work on or what you have done. If it is a signal proposal, you should explain why you are signaling. All the things that we don't have it written anywhere, and I think it will be awesome to have them, but not more than that. Just all the resources to make sure that all these things will happen naturally.
Yeah, exactly. I don't, that was just kind of an example. I think part of this would be an internal check, and just to have one person concentrated on this. And then, you know, as we grow, you just have so many different perspectives from a legal standpoint of what people, for example, I think during our last governance, this is more of an expansive thing, but think about, you know, vacation. There's all these issues that come up with everything from employment to securities laws to basic governance, and how do we create a decentralized system that sometimes you need a point of reference for. And what I'm proposing is more just starting out, putting something to paper that at least isn't ambiguous, so everyone can agree that that's at least the basic outline of what we do when we put a proposal up and do proof of work. And then, yeah, if it's useful after a month, then it's just a month's work. And then if it's not, it would be kind of where the need is, you know, how the job expands. That's it.
And I think what is needed and what I like about your proposal, I mean, your post on DAO Talk, is more like understanding and analysis, right? Like I do think ultimately, hopefully it influences the product. And I think that's what Augusto is talking about, right? Like here we have opportunities to improve the product, but I think it's not simply a technical task. If we were to have developers just tackle these problems, they'd be flying blind without some kind of analysis and, like, you know, deeper look at how things are operating and who's involved. And I think, I mean, I don't know what your proposal is going to be, but I mean, if it continues the kind of analysis that you have in this post, I think that's going to be super valuable to process and product going forward.
Great. Yeah. I mean, my intention would be to draft the proposal and get feedback from it, and then we can, you know, narrow the scope of work to what you all think is appropriate.
And just to, I guess, the elephant in the room. So we've been dealing with pseudonymity for a bit. So I don't know how people kind of feel. I mean, you know, part of the proof of work in this case was like Pulp's been around for a bit, has kind of influenced a couple different things, and then like even the post itself. But like, you know, is there something we want to think about in terms, and maybe this is like one of the things we need to better document, is like how can a pseudonymous person kind of interact with DXDAO? But any kind of thoughts from the community here?
Well, I think that one of the really nice things about pseudo-anonymity is that you can still, like Augusto mentions, like proof of work, you can totally have proof of work attached to a pseudonym, you know? And what, to me, what's important is the reputation that the community attaches to that identity, not whether the name used for that identity is like the name you use in another setting or whatever. So I think the idea of building up your reputation, both in the DAO, but also just in the community, is the important part of the idea, and not whether or not you're using your real name, for the most part. You know, maybe there's what is Hezra's real name? Maybe you'll never know, or maybe it's really not hard to figure it out.
I don't know, Sky sounds like a suspicious name to me. Yeah, I think it would be healthy for the DAO to support different, to support pseudonymity, to support entities, to support individuals, right? Like the more flexibility, I think.
Yeah,
better.
I have a one view on this, and we've actually experienced it in DXDAO, and I've experienced it in other DAOs as well. So I think it's okay to have pseudonymous or anonymous participants. In most cases that I've seen from experience, and it's up to the person. I mean, it's kind of on the person, but they are actually held to a higher standard than like a known person, and that is because if they do something negative, or if they don't perform, or if something happens, they have this option to like disappear and reappear as another person, right? And so a normal person, a known person, if they do something malicious, okay, yeah, they slash their rep and all that kind of stuff, but their reputation as a person in the industry is also hurt. So it's okay to have pseudonymous people, but I think that it's important for them to understand that the community will probably hold them to a higher standard, and that's fine, and maybe that's okay. But that has happened in the past, and I think that will continue to be the case.
That makes sense.
Yeah, which is cool. And I think it's good for the collective to have people like that. One way, in the developer case, one way to address that, which we talked about with some past developers, is imagine if we had like 100, part-time developers, whether they're in China or wherever they are, and they're like crushing GitHub tasks and issues, and then at the end of the month, they show everything they've done, and then they get payment for that. Like, there's no risk to DXDAO if you pay after proof of work like that, right? And so other people may want to know they have payment beforehand, and they're taking that risk. But like, actually, when I started, I was just doing tasks, and at the end of the month, I said, here's all the tasks I did. And I felt more comfortable asking after doing the task versus like, as a part-time person, it's harder to ask before you know what you're going to do, right? So like, maybe payment after work is always an option that the DAO has, and would be cool to have that on a scalable program across development and non-development tasks for the DAO. Like, if 100 people were all doing that, like the DAO could be very productive.
I also think, like, in terms of like being an on-chain autonomous organization, like supporting pseudonymity is really important and powerful, right? Like, I think that gives us, like, will allow more resilience. If people are known, it's easy to target them and, go after them. If people are pseudonymous and exist only on chain, that, like, I think reinforces the idea that the DAO is, like, really does exist on chain, like digitally, not in a physical jurisdiction tied to some location, right? Like, so I think it's actually even an existential thing that's really important to support pseudonymity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
sorry, Pulp had mentioned that in her in the post that was written up, like you really don't want the collective to just be like this known set of full-time workers that like any government or whatever could come after. You want it to be this on-chain collective of active 300 participants, and for the legal reasons. And so that's an important point of like, even if that costed down money, we need to like get to that point where it is decentralized across the entire world, and some are anonymous. Yeah.
Right. I think just to click that it's a very hairy issue because we have a lot of different products and each product, financial product, has a different set of analyses and different types of laws that can be applied. So that would be something if that was something people were interested in, I could write something up, like just a basic breakdown of our various products, because Omen has different issues versus DXD versus rep as far as all that's concerned. And then yes, as far as who's in charge is very important regarding just protecting people. And that is important for and for the basis of what we're doing as a DAO and creating dApps.
Just to add something, but the thing is that we have very different jurisdiction worldwide, and if you can do it maybe for the US, but we would have to do it for like everyone there's a member in, and because it's endless in a way.
Yeah. The internet is our jurisdiction.
It's not that I'm really I would like to see something like this, but the laws are very different. Also the US law and the European law, they have a different history, and it's different.
Yeah, I completely agree. That would be something I've also have experience in is comparative and international law. But I am a licensed attorney and practiced more so in federal law. But I would feel comfortable looking into that if that was something that people were interested in. But until that's like something people really care about, we can just stick to more the research side of things and go from there. But yeah, it's good to keep things as decentralized as possible for governance purposes.
Awesome.
Okay.
Cool. So we'll be on the lookout for kind of a work proposal or kind of narrowing on that, and reply to the thread with kind of some of these thoughts about voter participation, because I think we're hitting at something there. We don't have that much time. I just like the only two other things I wanted to do is just maybe if there was an update on XDXDAO, because I know that kind of relaunched, and there was like a proposal, the competition scheme proposal, I think is ongoing.
There's something else too I'd like to touch on before we close, which is we had talked about scheduling a meeting for like worker responsibilities, and to kind of address that specifically and give a forum for that. So I think maybe we could suggest a time or kind of like get that on the book for next week. Yeah,
and there's actually two things to take that, because I saw that Elon wants to kind of see if we can schedule a move around the governance discussion. So we didn't have time to talk about that then, but that's something I think we need to think about maybe for the new year, and like how we're scheduling things over the couple of weeks. But then specifically, I think this is Augusto has been talking about kind of like a worker coordination meeting. I don't kind of know the best thing, but just so we're kind of aware of the different tasks, and it's probably something that's not this like weekly cadence, but more on like the monthly, bi-monthly, or 2 times a month or something cadence. So I think we should try to schedule one soonish, like in the next like week. I don't know, was there any day or time preference? I can't remember. It's like the first Friday in the month or the last Tuesday.
I think, something like that. We decided on, I mean, not that we decided, but if we set the calls, we can add them on the calendar. I guess the best thing will be to submit a signal proposal, maybe reach some consensus internally on the worker side. Submit a signal proposal with the dates, because it's only 24 calls. It's 2 calls per month, so we can have a list of which day we consider are the best ones at the beginning and at the end of the month, to have the worker organizational calls. Or it can be done every 2 weeks on Thursday, Wednesday. I guess something along those lines, because Wednesday and Thursday are the days that we are active the most with the governance and with the weekly call. So we have to be there.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to figure out when we're kind of scheduling this, because yeah, we have everything so evenly spaced out now almost.
Every 2 weeks.
Maybe
between
after
the
the
governance
general
and
yeah,
Thursday.
Maybe after the general call or after the
Yeah.
governance call.
After the general call, okay.
I think after the general call. Actually, the general call I find to be like the most, like the least stressful, or like there's we're talking about things, but it's not as much like kind of going as new things going on. So I think that'd be a good one to do after the call, the Thursday call. Maybe next Thursday we start that then, kind of give a little preview of it on tomorrow's call, and then set and invite anyone that is interested for the following week.
Oh man, I'm going to miss it. But yeah, I'm going to meet the first one after pushing so hard for it. But yeah. Sounds great.
Cool. And then I think the lovely recording person is going to cut me off in a minute here, but didn't get, there is a update on the governance 2.0. We had a really great long chat yesterday, and we actually recorded it. So there's some kind of notes there so the videos are in the forum. So go ahead and check that out, and let me or anyone else know kind of any questions or comments on that. And then just the Dxd Sky, I know because I think I voted on a proposal. Yes, I did, on the competition scheme, and you were kind of doing that. So that's like the first one to kick off the ability to, or this is like the first Omen Squad competition scheme.
So it'll be the first competition that the DXDAO is running. It's the source good Omen markets. So anyone, interestingly, Daniel had proposed a proposal on mainnet around a Omen market around dots. I didn't get to talk to him about it, but it seemed like he was asking for the money to himself, and then he was going to put it into the market, maybe. Like, that's the way the proposal was laid out. So I think Geronimo let him know about the competition that's happening. But yeah, so I had a concern that, not many people are looking at DXDAO, so I spread that proposal around a few of the Keybase chats, and a bunch of people voted on it. So that competition proposal will pass, and then once that passes in a day or two, that starts the actual competition, and then we'll be able to see how this competition works. So we're going to want to, if that passes, we want to spread that out on Omen Keybase, Omen Telegram, maybe even tweet it out, that anyone can submit an Omen market into this competition, a potential Omen market. There's some rewards that we can mention, which is the reward is to earn rep on DXDAO, which then people, if you have rep, then you can start voting on this participation. So it could create a snowball, would be the idea. I still have a concern about how active the participation on this will be, but with this first competition, we'll start to see, so we can keep pushing it into the community. But
yeah, and obviously because gas costs are a different thing. Like, that's one where like anyone with as small amount of rep as possible can kind of engage with that, and that is really about engagement. So even we don't post that many. I mean, maybe we should be posting like proposals in the Telegram and elsewhere, but like that would definitely be one to just kind of get anyone to vote on.
Yeah. Oh, and we are in the process of moving some funds, hopefully soon, from the DXDAO dev multisig to XDXDAO. So hopefully very soon today, XDXDAO will actually have some money. We'll have about 10,000 XDAI in the DAO. And so maybe people want to start doing some proposals around a bounty or something like that on XDXDAO. But hopefully we could get some more activity. And usually this activity is going to start from the core, active participants of the DXDAO, but it's going to take some effort to get the XDAI version of XDXDAO, this other base, which is at this point it's just a tool that DXDAO has, right? It's not the voice of DXDAO. It's nothing. It's just a tool, a cheap, fun, fast tool that has some funding in it